presentation based on an interview with a woman named Nickie about her experience with the writing of the basic text. I've titled it, I Already Had the Hope, Nickie and the Power of Proximity. It centers on the Fourth World Lit Conference, which was held in Santa Monica, California in the end of April of 1981. This is from a fellowship report from 1982. It talks about the World Service Lit Conference held in Santa Monica, that the Memphis Review Forum or Gray Book had come out in February, and this was following the Third World Lit Conference, and that they'd had a lot of input, which was factored into the existing material. Material was then edited by a four-person team for grammar, punctuation, style, flow, content in an effort to prepare the book for World Service Conference approval, and that all existing stories were edited for grammar, punctuation, and style, but were not approved in group conscious by the Literature Committee. That's just a little bit of a summary of what happened at the Fourth World Lit Conference. But what I want to talk about is something different that happened at the Fourth World Lit Conference, and it has to do with who attended. So you had 146 people attend, coming from 15 different states. But what was really significant was that the majority of folks were, the Fourth World Lit Conference was their first one. So 79% attending the Fourth World Lit Conference. This was the first literature conference that they'd gone to. And of those, just under 90%, 103 were members from California. So prior to this, only 4 members from the California Fellowship had attended a prior World Lit Conference. So this is really the first time many West Coast members were directly participating in the writing of what would become the basic text. It was their first time being introduced to and exposed to the people that were part of that movement to make that happen. And it's an opportunity to listen to Nickie and think about how powerful that exposure was to her to be connected to people from outside of California and to learn about their experiences. So these are from 2 clips are from from one interview a couple of years ago with Nickie that was done by Francis and myself.
We had an area meeting and we had the gray books with us and we were talking in our area. And people had kind of glanced at that book and they wanted to send someone because the vote was for them to not be writing the book. Again, and that vote was because people really didn't know that that wasn't it, that they didn't know that it wasn't complete. Well, what happened was I showed up in Santa Monica, and when I got there, I was surprised to see how many people were there and how many people I didn't know. But I found a seat, and the tables were in a complete circle around the whole big room, and there were people at every table. So I'm sitting there, and I'm like halfway, directly opposite Bo, as each person talked about their area and the state they came from and the area they came from, and how how they didn't have meetings and how they didn't have a book and how they didn't have something to take to the newcomer who was brand new, and sometimes they would drive 200 miles to a meeting, Mississippi to Louisiana, different places like that. And I was so used to California where even though we were starting meetings, in a half an hour I could be somewhere. And then eventually towards that time, I could be at a meeting every single day and not have to drive that far. And so for me, it was a shock to hear that there weren't meetings like that everywhere else. I thought that it was the same everywhere. And to hear each one of these people talk, by the time they got to me, I was in tears because I realized that addicts were dying and that we needed to carry the message better. And the only way to do that would be the way that the forefathers of the other program had done it, and to write a book that could be sent anywhere and could be read by that new addict at 3:00 in the morning when he or she didn't want to call someone. I left there. I drove home. I was living in Long Beach by then, and packed all my things. Just stayed there for the whole week. Quit my job, and stayed there for that whole week, and just dedicated myself, committed myself to do whatever I needed to do, whatever talent I had, to this effort to create a book for addicts by addicts.
This is such a powerful story of, I think, what's common for a lot of people, which is to generalize our experiences to others. So if this is what Narcotics Anonymous is like, uh, where Nickie lived, then this is what it must be like elsewhere. And as a result of her being close to people who, who'd come for the Lit Conference, who were from a different part of the country, who lived in a place where NA wasn't as fully um, developed. And she goes from saying, I'm going to vote against this, I'm carrying the group conscience to vote against this, to a complete shift in her awareness and then and direct impact on her action. So her awareness is, oh, it's not like this everywhere, to an action of, I'm quitting my job and I'm coming to get involved. So the Fifth World Lit Conference happened the end of June into early July of 1981 in Warren, Ohio. And Nickie stays involved and goes there. And Jimmy had connected some new members in Ohio with Nickie, who ended up joining them at the Fifth World Lit Conference. But she shares this really powerful reflection and memory that, again, kind of emphasizes the transformation for her as she left her area of comfort and what she was familiar with and got introduced to people whose experiences were not the same as hers.
The best part of the story for me was standing on the balcony of this young couple's apartment before the meeting, and it still brings tears to my eyes. He's standing there. They had 6 months clean that they'd been hanging on to the recovery with that white book that they had and that priest. Chuck asked me, well, how long have you been clean? And I said, 5 years. And he burst into tears. And I thought, I didn't mean to hurt his feelings, you know. He said, I didn't know an addict could stay clean that long. So that was the best part to me, the hope. Because like I said, I was kind of spoiled. I already had the hope. And I didn't know that other people didn't.
So Nickie says that she already had the hope. And again, this experience of getting close to getting in proximity to other people from different places, just dramatically shifted her understanding, her perspective, and then her actions. And just this story, grateful that we were able to capture it and that she was so gracious with her time and in helping to share that. It's just a very powerful experience and an opportunity to reflect on what are the opportunities that exist for getting close or proximate to other people who may have different experiences than my own, and what that could lead to in terms of my understanding and actions.